Good morning. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for Rise and Shine with Miko today. So, I just completed a podcast session with a guest that came on, and we discussed pretty much we discover a pattern that's been playing in her life like for a while, and it's just so fascinating because I had the similar realization last week when I was at my training, the leadership training, and it's so insane how much like it doesn't matter how much consciously like 5% of our conscious mind is deciding like this is what I want and this is my goal. It doesn't matter how much you declare like this is what I am going to create, but that's only 5% of what shows up in your life. So I discovered that it didn't matter how much grind I put in, how much hustle I put in, how much action I put in. That was only 5% of the game, right? Consciously, I had this huge intention to create a massive movement to heal humanity, to support people with like coming out of the darkness. That was my conscious intention and my declaration for the past year or two, right? But 95% of my being this whole time was not believing in it. Like 95% of my being was telling me like that's not gonna happen. I don't have what it takes. I'm not good enough to make it happen. And 95% of my energetic being, that was what I was sending out. That was what I was declaring. So obviously the results that started to show in my life, like in my business, in my finances, in my relationship, it doesn't matter what it is, but if we can come back to the idea and own up to the results that show up in our life with 100% responsibility, that's when we become empowered to do something differently. So many of us are walking around feeling like a complete victim, like there are conditions and people and government outside of us that dictate our life results. But if we can be 100% responsible for every single thing that shows up in our life, and that's when we have the power to do something differently. So that's what I got to look at, during the training, and what we got to look at with my guest today on the podcast that I just recorded. And it's just so fascinating. And 95% of that is unconscious, unless you become conscious of what's been running your life, what's been playing in the back of your mind, what's that story, that underlying foundation that your life is building upon. So for me, my underlying foundation was, again, it was like, I don't have what it takes, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And that was like, think of it as like whatever is underneath, right? Like the roots of whatever you plant underneath the soil, that's what it's gonna bloom, that's what it's gonna show up in reality. So the underlying foundation of me was lack, was not worthiness, not good enough. So whatever started to show up, like the bloom of the tree or the bloom of the plant or the results in my life, reflected that. So if you want to look at what's in your being, like what's making up of your foundation, it's so simple. Just take a look, do an assessment of your life right now. Look at your relationships, look at your finances, look at your physical well-being, look at all of those things. Those all of your life events are just a reflection of what's in you. So if your finances right now are not where you want to be, then maybe you get to look at what part of me inside is feeling lack, is feeling scarcity, is feeling not good enough, is taking instead of giving. And if your relationships are not as intimate, as joyful, as fulfilling as you would love it to be, then you get to look at, okay, what part of me, what part of my being is not joyful, what part of my being is not feeling like I deserve to have intimate relationship, where am I not being intimate with myself, right? Intimacy is not sexual, it's not just sexual, right? Intimacy means into me you see, right? So what areas am I not being honest with myself? What areas am I not willing to look at and just get to know me, right? So if you're not being intimate with you, then you cannot expect to be intimate with another person. So just really using the opportunities of everything that shows up in your life as an opportunity for you to look at yourself. And when you can be 100% responsible for everything, that's when you can decide, okay, I'm gonna choose to respond differently this time. And then I don't want to spoil too much about what showed up in the podcast because I want you guys to go listen to that when it released. But essentially we discovered that my guest, she had this underlying foundation of like, she is not first priority. Like growing up, she was the last child, she was the youngest, so like she felt like she always got the hand-me-down clothes, the hand-me-down toys, and her parents only gave her attention and energy after they took care of like the siblings. So she always felt like she was not someone else's first priority. So it started to reflect. It started to reflect in all of her intimate relationships, like her romantic relationships. She only attracted men who would put her as the lowest priority. Like they would have demanding jobs, they would have such a busy schedule that they wouldn't put her as a number one priority because somewhere in her, as a part of her being, was feeling like she's not worth someone's time unless they just have some extra time on their hands. Like that was what she was declaring and radiating out to the universe. So we got to look at that. And then when we become aware of what's that underlying foundation, then that's when we can do the work to heal it and to reprogram, put in a completely new foundation. Because if you plant an orange seed, it's gonna bloom like an orange tree, right? So it's the same thing. Whatever you're planting that seed, you're gonna get exactly the same results. So I encourage you guys to really like start to pay attention to what shows up in your life, and first of all, be responsible. Be 100% responsible for everything that shows up. Do not blame, do not complain, do not judge, do not accuse. Be 100% responsible for everything, and you get to be empowered. So let me know, guys, what's resonating with you. Share this with anyone that you feel like can hear this message, and leave a comment below. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow morning. Take care.